Dishonor, Chapter 22-24. Joff. Please dash. Laener's sentence became a strangled cry as I let myself into Joffrey's office. When he realized I wasn't some random courtier that needed to be lied to, he turned back to his ex-lover, face full of grief. Joff. I love you, I care not that you can no longer fight. I loved you for your spirit, not your strength of arm, he whispered. The shorter man merely sighed from his position behind the desk and shot me a pained look. Don't mind me. I'm just your wife, I told him, fighting to keep my tone light. I shouldn't get involved in their fights, but Laenor really shouldn't keep doing this. He shot me an aggrieved look before dropping into one of the chairs opposite Joffrey's desk like a sulking child. Please try to understand, Laenor. I cannot. He floundered, seemingly unable to find the words and looking so distressed my heart ached in sympathy for him. Their eyes met across the desk, both conveying misery at their perceived positions. This wasn't time for me to play marriage counselor. I'd tried before, but Joffrey was still trying to discover who he was without the Night of Kisses, and Laenor still too keen for things to revert to how they'd been before, with neither willing to budge on the topic. I apologize, Your Grace. Please Joffrey, call me Rhaenyra and you needn't apologize. Not to me and not for this, I told him and meant every word. He gave me a quick smile that I was happy to see reached his eyes before busying himself with his papers. Now before we start, have you any news from the Stepstones? Not much. The prince remains hard to track. Lord Corlys is still at Bloodstone overseeing construction of the new watchtowers there, and Lady Lena stands ready to protect the fleet should anything happen. I turned to Laenor to find him watching me with barely suppressed laughter. And what has you so amused? I asked him archly. Laenor's eyes flickered to Joffrey for a moment before his amused smirk grew into a grin. In the background, I heard Joffrey shuffle more paper and cough loudly. I stamped down on my temper, disliking whatever joke he apparently shared with Joffrey at my expense. I leave you to figure it out, Rhaenyra. You wouldn't believe me if I just told you, he said finally. I told you not to bring it up, Laenor, muttered Joffrey. I turned back to him to find him blushing slightly and scowling at the Valerion. Unhappy with them both, I sat back in my chair and fixed them both with a look. Just begin with the briefing. You are not my fools, leave the jokes to Mushroom. Not that said sleazebag was actually funny, of course. The only time he cheered a room up was when he left it. Like naughty children being told off by a teacher, they shuffled straighter in their chairs and adopted serious expressions. The first thing to report is from Laenor's Captain Allard in Gulltown regarding movement of ships there. How do my men fare? Asked Laenor, frowning. His galleys had been unnecessary to dissuading the Manderleys from trying to aid the Graftons, but his captains had stayed to hunt pirates around the Sisters and not so subtly remind the Manderleys that any future attempts at a Grafton restoration would go poorly. I doubted they'd act without Stark approval, and the current Stark, Rickon, was very much an isolationist, no matter how much his brother might raise hell about getting involved in southern politics. Cregan I would have to deal with later. Preferably when he was closer to his age of majority, and that same uncle was a cause of concern for him. There has been no issue with your ships. The issue is that a sizable Arryn convoy set off from Gulltown a few days ago. We've received word that Lady Jane is aboard. That was surprising. I couldn't think of any reason she'd need to leave the Vale. Worry lanced through me. Is there any cause for concern? I asked, allowing worry to tinge my tone. We'd remained in close contact over the past few months, and I was closer to the younger woman than I had ever been. She was clever, quick-witted, and an endless source of funny stories. Ah, I thought you were aware. She is coming to attend your name day feast. Joffrey told me in a dry tone that told me he was quite aware I'd forgotten my own name day was coming up and was being facetious. And I had. With all the business with Helena, worrying about Lena, playing politics, and entertaining my court, the fact I was to turn 18 within a month had completely slipped my mind. I groaned and sank down into my chair, much to Laenor's amusement. I knew you'd forgotten. Not to worry, I hadn't. I asked Felena and Maria to help prepare it and told them it was unseemly that a princess should have to plan her own name day celebrations, my husband said, looking far too amused with himself. I shot him a glare. Well, I have ensured the staff are prepared for surprise visitors in the coming days. Moving on to my spies in King's Landing dash. You have spies in King's Landing now? Since when? And how much is this costing me? I only wanted Dragonstone free of spies. I cut him off. Laenor's smugness at the fact he'd gotten one over on me was making me grouchy. Uncharacteristically, Joffrey blushed. I admit my activities have expanded in scope much faster than expected, but I merely acted on several opportunities when they became available. As for budget, my information gathering brings in some money to allow me to reduce the strain on your finances. And that means? Asked Laner, looking at Joffrey in wonder. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat in response before directing a pleading look my way. I was hoping to keep my ways a secret, he said, hopefully. I decided not to take pity and instead crossed my arms, an unimpressed expression in place over my face. Very well. I have been buying brothels in King's Landing, Old Town, Gulltown, Lannisport, Seaguard and White Harbor. I have yet to acquire any in Lordsport, as the Ironborn do not take kindly to strangers. Laner's mouth fell open and I mirrored it. Oh gods, he'd pulled a little finger. He'd pulled more than a little finger. How had I not seen this coming? Brothels. You've made us whoremongers, hissed Laner, looking angry. Joffrey was trying to formulate an answer, but my brain was running fast. If discovered it, the backlash would be a pig to deal with, but then a lot of things we did would be awkward to explain in court, and like it or not, prostitutes were considered closer to furniture by the lords of Westeros. I could see the logic in recruiting them to gather your information, but I still disliked it. Tell me you at least treat the women who work for you with respect, I growled, ignoring Laner's startled look. They are well paid, have access to medical treatment if it's needed, I provide security for them, and they have the right to turn down any client for any reason, he told me. I willed my jaw to unclench. For the working women and men of Westeros, those were ludicrously good terms for employment. Although I doubted Joffrey already had that in place out of the good of his heart. Nobody would risk a deal like that to betray him. But you have still made us whoremongers. What if someone finds out? Asked Laner after I'd given Joffrey a stiff nod. Joffrey merely looked uncomfortable again, a look that did nothing to close the pit of dread that had opened in my stomach at the news of Joffrey's methods of gathering information. I would say that no one would, but he trailed off and I bit back a groan. Recently someone has been challenging my operations in King's Landing. Outing my spies, tracking my business fronts. I worry this person may be trying to discover my identity, but I believe the risk worth it. Men will spill any manner of secrets to pretty women that the rack could not drag out of them. I sighed and tried to massage away an approaching headache. What's done is done. Continue with your briefing, Sir Joffrey, just, please be careful. He nodded seriously and then gathered himself before continuing. More of Alicent's greens have lost favor. Lord Gerald said that it's no coincidence that so many have lost their posts over the past few months, but no one seems to know what happened. I have a few informants close to the Queen and they say she is keeping it very close to her chest. Regardless of why, it's forced a change of tactics. She's not going for the lords at court anymore, but trying for a Lord Paramount. She is actively promising a royal marriage for the Lannisters, amongst other concessions. My spies report they are cautiously interested. They still remember losing out to the Farmans and are keen to even the odds. And after that she will turn her attentions to Boros Baratheon to secure the south. I didn't need to see Joffrey's nod to know I was right. Can we court the reins in order to stall her? We both knew that actively sowing discord amongst a Lord Paramount's vassals was a dangerous game with every chance to backfire, but these were desperate times. Let her court Lord Boros, he will side with Mother when the time comes, said Laner, kicking his feet onto Joffrey's desk. That wasn't true, of course. In canon he'd side with Aegon in return for a marriage between Aemond and one of his daughters. He would be one of the contributing factors to the death of Lucerys Valerion, one of Laener's sons, when his daughter goaded the one-eyed psychopath into kinslaying. We can't bet on that. Lord Bormund loved your mother, but Boros is cut from a different cloth. He'll side with the faction that gives him the best deal. Laner looked taken back at that, then worried. I agree with her grace. Lord Bormund was an honorable man, but his son has made a few worrying moves within the capital that indicate he's looking to be courted. Lord Gerald approached him, but, like many, it looks likely he seeks a marriage, said Joffrey with a sympathetic look at Laner. We can court the reins and step up our work with the Tyrells, but I fear swaying yet more neutrals to our cause will grow harder from this point onward. Instruct Lord Gerald to sound them out for recruitment and see if he can't figure out an opening offer. We just need to prevent Alicent from having a solid grip on the Westerlands. As for the Tyrells, well, Father's punishment has been a pain, but I will have a royal visit there at some point. Joffrey obediently wrote my commands down. Laner still looked unhappy, but I couldn't explain to him how I knew his mother's cousin would betray us in a heartbeat if it benefited him. Those are the major power moves at the moment. Lord Gerald is masterfully handling the minor moves within court, so as long as you are happy with our current bearing? I nodded. Excellent. Laner and I began to rise but paused as Joffrey waved us back into his seats. He looked just as nervous as he had earlier, tongue darting out to wet his lips, and he seemed to struggle for the right words to say. I have something else to report. Something, closer to home, he said finally, and our worried looks merely deepened. I couldn't remember anything worrying happening around about this time in canon. Nothing that would only be spotted by a spymaster anyway. Daemon's return and Rhea's death would be blasted across Westeros. Go ahead, I said. My spies on Driftmark have reported some worrying information in regards to Lord Corlys, Joffrey said, eyes finding Laenor. Laenor looked bewildered and glanced towards me. What is it, Joff? How's father going to anger Rhaenyra now? He asked, attempting a smile and teasing tone, but the worried look in his eyes ruined the effect. Joffrey sighed before leaning back in his chair. It's not just Rhaenyra he'll upset. It's Lady Rhaenys, Lady Lena and yourself if I'm right, he said, rubbing his eyes with the back of his hand. This did not bode well. He'd only risk pissing Rhaenys off for something big and important. My mind flashed to Lena, who was still on the stepstones, still within Daemon's reach. Had Lord Corlys begun enacting some kind of plan to push her into his arms? My stomach was doing backflips in worry at the thought. When your father last returned to Driftmark, he made several visits to a certain shipwright in Hull. Oh. Oh no. Of course, Adam and Alan. They hadn't popped up until much later, but, well, Joffrey had been dead almost a year in canon by now, and Laenor would never think to look. It seems that visit, and an earlier one, has resulted in dash. Father is hiding bastards in Hull. Laenor's voice was cold. I watched him in surprise. His face bore no expression, but he was tense, hands clenching and unclenching. And taking an active role in raising them when he can. Do you wish for me to alert Lady Rhaenys? Joffrey asked, and I felt a jolt of panic. Rhaenys would send them running at best or kill them at worst, and I'd lose access to 2 potential dragon riders I knew would be completely loyal to my cause. No. Laenor and Joffrey shot me startled looks before Laenor's face twisted in annoyance. What I mean is, if Lady Rhaenys gets rid of these bastards, he'll just make more, likely out of her reach this time. We have these within our grasp, surely we could subvert them. Besides Laenor, they are your brothers. Laenor studied me for a long time, face twisting this way and that as he thought through the benefits and downsides of keeping his father's bastards alive and within spitting distance. An insult to his mother, but impossibly useful down the line when it came to confronting his father. Finally he nodded, stiffly and only barely, but he nodded. Joffrey will keep an eye on them. Could I speak to him alone, please? His voice was low, filled with distress, and his eyes never left my face. I glanced between the two. Laenor was stiff and unmoving, face a mask of neutrality, whilst Joffrey merely looked worried. Of course, husband. I bid you good day, Sir Joffrey. Laenor left for Driftmark that day, and I tried not to be annoyed that he hadn't even stopped to say goodbye. Joffrey assured me I had done nothing wrong, that he was upset about their argument and the bastards, but I wasn't sure. Something about the way he'd shut down in that meeting was niggling at me. I'd gotten too used to having him around, tricking myself into thinking we were more than friends. Riding together, the intimate touches, fooling myself into thinking it was me he really loved and that he was not just playing a part. I sank into a black mood after he left that not even my ladies could cajole me from. Not that this fact prevented them from trying when they noticed my sulks. Leave her, Maris, our princess is heart-sick for Sir Laenor, Maria hissed. Maris Grafton shot her a sneer but settled back down, glaring at her sewing. I ignored them, not in the mood for Maria's pity or Maris' remarks. Besides, I was quite certain that whatever comforting Maris had been planning would have had the opposite effect. Behind me, Felena continued pulling my hair into braids. That goes for you too as well. I didn't need to turn and see who she was speaking to. There were only 2 suspects after all. I could almost feel Felena's worried yet disapproving look being directed at my back. A particularly hard tug that had pain stinging across my scalp, and suddenly I couldn't take it anymore. Out! Get out! All of you! My ladies scattered at my roar. In the distance I was vaguely aware of Syrax echoing it, but all I could focus on was the pounding of blood in my ears and the fact that my eyes were burning with unshed tears. Maris was the last to leave, casting me a look that made me contemplate violence as she left. I waited in the silence for a while before willing my body to untense, my hands to unclench and my breath to normal from the ragged panting it currently was. I counted to 10 a lot. and then threw a dagger at the bedpost. It connected with a dragon head and I felt a little better. There was a small but tentative knock on the door and I groaned, running my hands through my hair. Felena had only managed to braid half of my hair before I'd sent them all running. I must look ridiculous and lopsided. I said I wished to be alone. I barked when the knock sounded again. "It's me," came Helena's voice and I groaned again. She wouldn't take me sending her running as well as my ladies would. Barring her entry would only similarly upset her. Her presence at my door stank of Joffrey's interference. Damn that man. I dropped into a chair and lowered my face into my hands, scrubbing them over my face as if I could wake up from this dream. "Come in," I sighed. She trotted in, letting the door slam in Ser Byron's face, and I tried to suppress a smile, tried to remain angry. It seemed my little sister had picked up on my disdain for the man and was making it clear that if I didn't like him, she didn't. To think he'd probably assumed this a promotion for coming to my notice and having me strike at him, I wondered if he still felt that way. "Ser Joffrey said that you were upset," she said, face earnest in the way only a 6-year-old could manage before her eyes traveled to the dagger and widened. It was hard to be angry at a 6-year-old that worshipped the ground you walked on, especially one as genuinely sweet as Helena. It makes my heart clench to know what happened to her in canon. Not this time she would have a big sister that was worthy of her. A little. I miss Laenor. That is all. She frowned at me, turning that over in her mind before shrugging. "Your hair is a mess," she finally said, and I laughed. Genuinely, honestly laughed until tears ran down my face and my stomach hurt. It wasn't funny, it wasn't, but, oh, how could one not laugh at such a mismatch in priorities, and once I'd started, I found myself unable to stop. Helena just pouted at my amusement, evidently thinking it applied to her, before dragging another chair loudly across the stone floor so she could clamber up onto it and begin undoing my braids. "I haven't asked you how you're finding your fostering yet," I asked her, once I'd calmed myself enough to speak. "I miss mother and father and Aegon and even Emond and Daeron, but it's nice being with you. You let me practice with the bow and your ladies are very nice," she told me as my hair fell down around my shoulders. "Well, that's good. Maester Gerardis says you're doing quite well in your lessons." "Maester Gerardis is very strange," she told me, tone so serious I started giggling again. She joined me this time, hopping down from her chair with a wide smile on her face. I scooped her into a hug which she returned eagerly. "Maester Gerardis also says you're sleeping a bit better now." I hoped she was. She certainly looked better, more energetic with less dark circles under her eyes. A child of 6 should not look so exhausted. A lot better. I have less nightmares now and more good dreams. I felt myself relax a little at that. For a while I'd been genuinely considering sending her back to King's Landing and Alicent. Helena was quick to assure me she had nightmares there, but surely they hadn't been that bad. Surely Viserys would have warned me. Even he couldn't be that dim. I'd feared a move to be fostered by the sister she may subconsciously view as a threat, and the one her siblings definitely viewed as a threat was making them worse. "Did you want to go and practice?" she asked, leaning back with eyes bright. I sighed again, this time with fondness. The fact she'd waited this long to ask was probably a sign of great restraint on her part, so I rewarded her with a nod of assent. A few hours later, I was bitterly regretting my weakness. Ser Roga had taken my poor performance with the bow as a personal challenge and had become a terror during practice, and warrior damn me if I ever missed a day on the range. The fact that there was a 6-year-old happily out shooting me not 5 feet away was something of an embarrassment, but I had to admit, I had improved. Long gone were the days of being a danger only to the hay and maybe extra-large castle walls. I could hit the target reliably, was even starting to hit closer to the middle. Helena and I got so absorbed that I almost missed it when a messenger in Targaryen colors found us. "Your Grace," he said with a bow. I handed my bow and quiver to Roga and turned to face the youth. "Aaron's ships have been spotted approaching the harbor. They'll make land within the hour." I summoned my ladies and made my apologies for my earlier behavior before dispatching the twins to help Helena prepare. She had maids, but the twins liked her and she liked them. She found them funny, only the gods know why. My ladies-in-waiting accepted my apologies gracefully, and all but Maris seemed genuine. Still, the baleful looks she was shooting my way lasted until she realized Jane was here. "Do you suppose she might allow me to visit my mother and sisters?" she asked, voice smaller than I had ever heard it. "That is a privilege granted at the pleasure of Lady Arryn," Felena bit out. "Don't be cruel, foul." "I'm sure Lady Arryn will allow such a visit," came Maria's voice from behind me as she tamed the tangle Helena had caused when she'd freed my partial braids. Maris said nothing, eyes on me. I will speak to Lady Erin on your behalf, Maris, I told her after a moment. She nodded stiffly and busied herself with preparing my dress. Felena glanced between me and her before her eyes softened slightly. Felena wasn't completely married to propriety all the time, she knew when to bend slightly. Still, it was surprising to see her raise a comforting arm to Maris' shoulder, and given the way the Grafton jumped in fright, Maris hadn't been expecting it either. Behind me, I heard Maria hum in satisfaction. I wasn't going to ponder whether she'd engineered that. Down that road, madness lay. 3 galleys bearing the Erin heraldry glided into the port at Dragonstone. The shouts of my own dock workers and Jane's sailors were heard as they began the process of docking, disembarking passengers, and the unloading of luggage. I watched as the party that was very evidently Jane's left the ship and made their way towards us. Behind me a veritable army of courtiers were assembling, each likely eager to judge how close my cousin and I were or simply see if they could ferret out any gossip. She was smiling broadly when she reached us as if someone had just told her a very good joke. At her back was a party of Vale nobles of which I only recognized a few. One of which was Lady Rhea Royce, who was making an effort to look like she was smiling but was having the effect ruined by how pale and sweaty she was. And if I thought Lady Rhea was bad, poor Jessamine Redfort put her to shame. She was leaning on a tall, dark-haired man who I was willing to bet was her brother given their similar looks, and it looked like he was all that was keeping her upright. The last lord I recognized was the broad and tall Lord Dennis, who was beaming at me and showing no signs of sea-related distress at all. "Cousin," called Jane when she was close enough that the winds could not snatch her words away. "Welcome to Dragonstone, Lady Erin. It is not as beautiful as the Eyrie, but I'm quite fond of it anyway." She laughed and pulled me into a hug. "Perhaps we should proceed inside. I note certain members of Lady Jane's party could use some time to freshen up," Joffrey said from somewhere within the welcoming group. Jessamine's noise of agreement turned into a groan and retching, and it was with no small amount of alarm that we quickly ushered them along lest the very rare, very treasured non-dragon paved path get puked on. "Poor Jess," Jane said under her breath as we made our way inside. I linked her arm with mine and brought her closer. "Has she been like this the whole way?" I asked, and Jane giggled and then looked guilty for doing so. She didn't want to come, but the alternative was staying in the Eyrie by herself. "She's always been terribly seasick," Jane told me, no small amount of affection in her voice. "Where is Ser Laner?" "Driftmark," I answered, voice strained. Next to me, Jane sighed and shot me a pained look. We reached the entrance hall and servants were quick to come forth and begin showing the guests to their rooms. "Perhaps we can speak privately, cousin?" she asked. Lord Dennis shot us both a curious look from where he was being ushered away. We ended up in my offices with wine. The balcony overlooked the docks, so we got an excellent view of the Erin ships. "You have bad news," I said as we sat down. Jane poured herself a glass of wine from the pitcher and then took a gulp before she spoke. "I promise you we came for your name day, but I do confess to another motive. The Falcons started rough. We gathered the volunteers at Strong Song and saw early success in fighting the Boulder Raiders. The problem is the clans have fallen back and are raiding in reprisal across Waynwood and Royce lands." I groaned. We had been hoping the clans would not split up like that until the Falcons had more experience, that they would underestimate the threat they represented until much later. In retrospect, this was a mistake. It's not as bad as it sounds. We have knights pushing back the raiders, but it seems we'll need more money and more resources to spread the men out further and raise more of them. I had hoped to speak to Ser Laner regarding a further loan, but, is everything truly all right between you? It is my fault. Joffrey assures me he will come round, but the anger is all me, I told her. Jane nodded, looking decidedly unreassured. "I will have a message sent to Driftmark, summoning him back so that you may speak with him. And hopefully we won't have marital strife in front of the guests." Laner greeted Jane with a practiced bow followed by a kiss on the cheek and moved on to greeting Rhea, who managed to not make an acidic remark about decorating choices and dragons for an entire 5 minutes to return the greeting, and finally Jessamine, who looked a lot better than she had 2 days ago when Jane's party had first arrived. "How is Driftmark?" asked Rhea, as Laner made himself comfortable. We had all gathered in my solar. I didn't use it often, preferring my offices closer to the docks, but it seemed more appropriate as it was larger and had more creature comforts. "Faring well. Spicetown has grown much in the past year and high tide nears completion. We've already moved much of Father's treasures there for display. Only a few of the outer towers to complete now," Laner replied, his face glowing with boyish delight. High Tide and Spicetown were as much his projects as his father's. I busied myself with my wine and ignored the ache in my gut. Laner could do as he wished, and if I had convinced myself otherwise, it was my doing. Excellent. I must say, Terence has been most pleased with business you and he struck whilst you were in the Vale, Jane said. Laner acknowledged the praise with a slight bow of his head. And the ships you sent to us have been a great help in clearing the waters around Gull Town. Thank you, Lady Erin. I hope to have a long and prosperous relationship with Gull Town, he said. Jane was informing me about the change of scale the Falcons will have to operate on. Is that covered by the pot your father allocated to the Vale? I asked him. He turned to me, shoulders tense before nodding. If Lady Erin requires further loans, I have acquired prior approval up until a point. I trust the current rates are acceptable. I have a letter that Lord Terence wrote up to put the matter to you. I'm afraid my education was rather lacking on such matter, Sir Laner. Translation, Yabert didn't think you needed to know how money works and assumed your husband would attend to it, so now you're desperately trying to catch up despite knowing even if you had been taught Terence and Laner could still run rings around you when it comes to finances. I will look over his proposals and send a reply as soon as I am able to, Lady Erin. We frittered away a few hours making idle chatter. I was happy to see the relationship between Rhea and Jane had thawed considerably in the few months since I'd last seen them in the same room. Although there were still awkward pauses where one said something and realized it could be taken with offense, Jessamyn's quick wit normally compensated with a joke or a change of topic. Rhea Royce was due for a fall from a horse at some point soon, and I hoped among all hope that I had butterflied it away. The removal of a powerful enemy from her borders, a much better relationship with her liege lady, a trip to see her niece, something had to have worked. I couldn't just tell her never go hawking again without sounding like a complete lunatic. Jane's boisterous laugh startled me from thoughts, and I looked up to meet Laner's violet eyes watching me with a weird mix of suspicion, curiosity and triumph. You seem distracted, wife, he said when he noticed my focus, cutting through Jessamyn's retelling of a marriage proposal she'd had that had ended in disaster. There was an edge I wasn't sure I liked in his voice. 3 pairs of curious eyes turned to us and I blushed under the attention. Merely thinking, I replied. His answering smile was somewhat reminiscent of a shark. Ah. I do believe I promised to meet Lord Dennis at some point for a small tipple. Care to join me, Jane? Jessamyn? Rhea rose to her feet and gestured to the 2 women, who mostly just looked puzzled. I suppose the woman whose life was one ongoing domestic argument could spot marital strife from a mile away. I fought the urge to cause a scene and instead wished them a pleasant meeting with Lord Dennis. What was that for? We may be having our differences, but if you humiliate me in front of my supporters again, there will be consequences. I snapped the moment I was reasonably sure they were out of earshot. Laner merely sat back and took a sip of wine, watching me over the rim of his cup. Okay, no matter how satisfying it would be to rip the damn cup out of his hand and pour the stupid thing over his head, it's a poor opening move in marital discussions. Let's not escalate. It was still hard to force myself back into the chair opposite him, feeling like a child waiting to be told off for something. He finally finished his wine and placed the empty cup onto the table, pointedly ignoring my folded arms and restless leg. For a brief moment I thought he was going to pour himself some more, and trust me, if he had he'd be wearing the wine, childish or not, but he leant back and studied me. Now, you are going to tell me what in the 7 hells is going on, he said, interlacing his fingers and resting his chin on them. For all that he was trying to maintain a calm demeanor, I could hear the frustration in his voice, and it was not a new frustration. It was the frustration of someone who'd been chewing on a problem for years and was in sight of the solution. You will have to be more I started, only to be interrupted by his anger. You know damn well what I am speaking of, Rhaenyra, he roared, and I flinched. I couldn't help it. I fought to control my breathing as he froze in the chair opposite me, watching me as if I were about to shatter. I am sorry. You have lied to me for so long, I cannot bear to hear you lie to me again. So I ask, how did you know about Daemon? Where did the book come from? The plague in the Vale? How did you know I had brothers? Oh silly Laner, I thought we'd gotten this out of the way. You see, Daemon treated Alicent and Rhea like crap, and I reasonably extrapolated he'd do the same to me, as women do not seem to be worth much in his eyes. As for the book, I retrieved that from Runsider's library. You do remember how my mother read to me every night and instilled in me a love of reading, don't you? How I was an advanced child, precocious and ever exploring. As for its true origin, you'd need to ask the maesters. As for the plague, illness doesn't strike just one place, and it's highly suspicious that the man who would benefit from it the most is the one telling everyone about it, and honestly it mirrored my situation too much for me to dismiss it. Your brothers? Simple, Joffrey wouldn't be worried about girls. They couldn't challenge you in a succession dispute, and anyway, Corlys doesn't think highly enough of girls to suggest them as alternatives, even if he loves their mother more than he loves Rhaenys. Simple, logical explanations. Anyone could have made those decisions with the information I had. You are merely being unreasonably paranoid. I opened my mouth and found I couldn't do it. I'd seen him grow and change from a scared young boy into a cool, self-assured man. He'd clawed his way from his father's control and begun acting like the future Lord of the Tides. This Laenor in front of me was so completely different than canon, and I had put that into motion. He was my husband by law, even if I would never have his heart, and I couldn't keep lying to him. He was supposed to be my greatest ally. If I could not trust him, then I could trust no one. I was 4. His head shot up as I started to speak. One day I remembered another life. The future, I think, and in that future I had read a book. You remembered the future in which you read a book? He asked, face etched with disbelief. When you put it like that, it did sound fairly ridiculous, but what was I to tell him? That I'd been born in this body. That control had come and gone throughout my childhood, that it had been periods of clarity intermixed with a half-remembered dream state, that I'd finally fought my way to the fore only to find I was a child who could do nothing to prevent what was to come. You wanted the truth. You are right. I'm sorry, he said. I scooped up my glass and poured the last of the wine into it before downing as much as possible and taking a deep breath. Then I told him. I told him about how the future was supposed to be, about the slow decline of the Targaryen and Valerian families, about the extinction of dragons, about all that would come after. He listened in silence, face only growing graver with every twist and turn. After I had explained the dance, I went further. Aegon Dragonbane, Daeron the young dragon, Baelor the blessed, Viserys, Aegon the unworthy, Daeron the good, Daemon Blackfyre and the great bastards, Aerys, Mikar, Aegon the unlikely, Jaehaerys, and finally the Mad King. I spoke of what I knew of their failings and triumphs, and how much of it could be traced back to here and now, the Blacks and the Greens. 2 factions that would burn Westeros to the ground in a war it would take generations to recover from, forge precedents that would end the Targaryen dynasty's hold on Westeros and in all likelihood, result in its extermination, as even if Daenerys could hatch 3 dragons in that distant future, she was unlikely to hold it in the face of a winter would herald a second long night. Afterwards, Laenor was silent for a very long time, processing what I'd told him. Outside, the evening had rolled in and the sky was beginning to darken. A chilly wind made its way inside and I shivered. So, this is why you're so certain Alicent will act, he said quietly. Father always wondered why you were so keen to escalate court politics to the degree you have. He said it was reckless. I chuckled at that, but there was no real humor in it. I was still waiting for the reaction, a sign of what his true feelings about this were. He was silent again, body tense as he stared at something in the distance I couldn't see. It was difficult to breathe properly, as if the very air I was breathing was trying to strangle me. You will need to write down the exact course of events. Even if they will not happen now, it will still be invaluable. And we will need to tell Joffrey. He died in this recounting of history, you said? Then he is an anomaly. It will be useful. He held up a hand and drew a deep breath in and out. I need time to think this through. I need time. You have just told me I will be murdered. Oh, of course. You got rid of Carl. I kept my mouth shut, but I sensed he wasn't looking for my answer anyway, he already knew. So, yes. I need time. He rose on unsteady feet and took a moment to gather his bearings before heading to the door. I remained sitting, eyes burning. What? Will you? I wasn't even sure what I was asking for. Forgiveness maybe? Was forgiveness even possible? I had manipulated him from the beginning, revealing the sheer depths of what I had done to him in one fell swoop. And I'd been so proud about the changes I'd wrought. My revelation must have ripped the foundations from his world. Stupid. Foolish. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.